X-Men 97, episode 6.
Life Death Part 2. Right?
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's just such a weird feel to it after that huge episode.
Here's my thinking on the episode. Overall, is that I really loved the adversary as somebody who read that monthly for many years, and during that time, the adversary has been kind of a thing a thorn in the X-Men side for a long time, not just this one thing, but it was because of him that I thought she regained her powers in the comics through him, but at a price or something. I can't remember.
I mean, that's kind of what happened in the show.
Yeah.
In this episode. In a way.
But I really liked the way they animated him. I really liked the voice work.
Yeah, I love the voice. That
the
was awesome.
writing is really good in this episode. I mean, it's always good,
dude.
But the dialogue is really good, and the way that it's delivered, and the coupled with the animation of what they look like, it's just really, to me, it's just a top-notch cartoon, and the best stories play with the continuity, Yeah. And
this
story is an adaptation of the comics. It's not straight out of the comics, but the fact that they're using so much of the comics like lore.
I mean, and that's what the original show
so
did.
Cool.
Original show did, and and it's again someone who is like again. I keep saying again.
Stop it. Again. As
I've mentioned on the show, I have just recently started to pay more attention to the X-Men and read more about the X-Men.
Yes.
So I didn't have a lot of knowledge of the adversary, to be honest, but I understood enough of what was happening to kind of piece it together. And I known that the X-Men had played with magic and sorcery and shit like that before. So I was like, okay, whatever. It didn't like at any point like take me out of it. Like, what the fuck? I'm like, dude, there's some weird ass shit in the X-Men. I learned to accept that. But like, I really love that storyline. And honestly, this episode for me drags a lot when it deals with the Charles Xavier shit. And I personally think, in my opinion, I would have loved it just to be Storm storyline.
Stone.
And then at the end, do the tease with Professor X. You know what I mean? And then we can do a story that fits better with that. And you can spend the next episode talking more about... Because I don't know. Yeah. I just feel like Storm's story was so much more interesting and had so much more momentum that I was more invested in.
You forget that Professor X's story starts with a really fucking cool space battle, dude.
Yeah, that was
pretty fucking cool against the Kree. Like, I mean, that's
and we get Ronan the Accuser just like there.
You know what I mean?
My God.
But that's the Imperial Guard, and that's like their own superheroes. So seeing all them was like fucking cool.
Gladiator and all that shit.
So fucking cool. And then but Deathbird,
and having read I just wanted to make a quick point before you got into that, because I want you to go off on Deathbird because I don't know anything about her.
Okay.
But honestly, reading the Defenders comic, and we'll talk about the 5th episode later, or 5th issue later. Reading that and getting to the issue where it talks about archetypes, and then to watch this and see the archetype of who Gladiator is and like that, and like to see that was kind of fun. And it is. I mean, I always love it when Marvel
is basically Superman with a mohawk.
When Marvel does the I love it when they get into their cosmic.
But he's not. When they
get into their cosmic shit. Can I finish?
Sorry.
Can I finish? I'm done.
I mean to say that Gladiator has all the powers of Superman. He's not, and I think he's actually more powerful. But
okay.
Well, I think he's stronger.
Yeah, because power levels are real.
But he's not like Superman at all. He's not like benevolent.
Yeah, he's a douche.
He's kind of a fucking douche. But Deathbird is Lilandra's sister, and she really made more of an appearance during the 90s when Jim Lee came on board. And there's a very famous splash page of her, and it's almost a pinup. in her battle armor and stuff.
Yeah.
And that face, the Jim Lee face that he made for her, you know, the face that Jim Lee drew in that particular splash page, pinup, whatever you want to say, I could see it so many times in this episode.
Yeah.
There were so many times that she was clearly represented, like, and the design of that character in this show was clearly designed off that. And I think almost every I remember, like, years later in the comic books, you know, an artist would be drawing the book and didn't have the chops that, like, Jim Lee did. And he was clearly trying to, like, channel that picture.
Yeah.
That art style for her, at least. And it was like, dude, so bad. Like, there was a point, I know, where I was reading a comic book and this guy looked like he traced the exact, like she was standing in a doorway, and so he traced like half of the fucking splash page. And it was like, dude, just, you're not a good artist.
It's okay. Honestly,
but she's a dick.
This show continues to really impress me, and again, I said it last week, like, whatever happened with Bo DeMeo and Marvel, I hope they sort that out, because like what he was able to do as a showrunner of this show and one of the producers,
there's a lot of
like,
John
this show
Byrne
is just
in the design of the Shar.
Yeah, and
the Shi'ar, I guess.
This is one thing I love about where we are with Marvel, is where I'm someone who has a good amount of knowledge of Marvel lore, but I know enough to see, like, oh wow, we got introduced to the Kree and the Shi'ar and the Skrull, like all of the alien races that we've been introduced to in the
those
MCU
are basically
already.
like the three. Those have always been the three big galactic empires. The Kree, the Skrull, and the Shar.
It's just crazy to think that we've been introduced to that before we were, like, introduced to mutants. Just because of the whole Fox thing and all that. But
they did what they could with what they had, honestly. Pretty well.
My big point to make out of that, like, what I've loved what the MCU has done is they've really embraced the more nerdy aspects of the Marvel universe.
Oh, they're digging deep, and I fucking love it, dude. Give me some more deep cuts.
So when I see,
I think I saw Hussar, one of the Imperial Guards. She's like a horse lady, kind of red skin and whips,
like,
shit.
And like in that first fight, where it's like, oh, that's Ronan the Accuser. I've seen that. Oh, he's a Kree. I've seen that hammer before, so I know, you know, what the Kree are and all that shit. And I love
that. Drop the hammer,
Again, the Storm stuff, I just feel was so much more interesting this whole episode. And again, I'm not saying that I didn't like the Xavier stuff. I don't know. I'm more concerned with what's happening with the X-Men right now, because we got left on such a shitty cliffhanger of episode 5, and we're trying to figure out what timeline we're in. This episode was heavy on the intro of, like, shit that was not in the last, like, so clearly we're going towards Bishop and Cable and all this future shit going on.
My thinking was that
and to see all this stuff, I'm like, this feels like filler a little bit.
Well, hang on. My thinking
not
was
the Storm stuff.
Well, but remember, up until this episode, we think Professor X is dead. Okay? Or did we know that he was with the show?
I don't know.
Okay.
But I had the... he was gone at the very least.
Right. So hang on a second. So this is cool that he's doing well, that he's walking. You know what I mean? That he's doing well. That's kind of cool to see. The armor that he's wearing is from that same Jim Lee storyline that I was telling you about. The one, I think that storyline led up to the storyline where, which was had to do with Magneto and Asteroid M, which is when Claremont quit, because he was like, "Fuck this Jim Lee guy." I don't know why. Anyway, but it was a really cool story because, again, they showed a lot of deep cuts from the Marvel universe. A lot of the design of the Shi'ar and the Council. What was the old guy's name? Her Chamberlain, Akiko.
I don't remember.
Oh man, that's like, that guy is well known in the comics. during the whole original Dark Phoenix saga, which is where we first get introduced to Lilandra. And in that time, actually, Lilandra was trying to get her brother off the throne, and he had possession. They referenced the M'Kraan crystal.
Yeah.
And that's where everything happened that led to the Dark Phoenix saga. Anyway, but just seeing all this stuff, and seeing the designs so closely resembling the artwork of the comics I loved, of John Byrne, his art and everything, that was really cool for me. So even though there was a lot of filler in those points, but dude, we know that fucking we know now that Professor X is definitely a sub, dude.
Well, I mean, come on.
Woke.
Can we talk about...
Are any of the alt-right dipshits going crazy about that?
Can I just say that it is a cool moment when he's like, I need to go back to Earth. I need to go back to the X-Men. But, however, it gets undercut because it's fucking hilarious that this woman he's with says, he's like, I gotta go back to Earth. Because he is got all those people in the astral plane. He's trying to teach them about who he is, and he's trying to just say, let's stop fighting, blah, blah, blah. But by doing that, he gets to see all of what happened through his mutant powers of the X.
Mutant powers.
Will you shut up? Through his mutant powers that we know and love, he's able to see what happened.
Speak for yourself.
With Genosha. And he's like, I need to go back. And then this woman that he's marrying, she's like, but if you leave, the council will not really like that. They already don't like you. And he's like, I don't give a shit. I got to go see my X-Men. Which, again, I just think is funny because people tend to forget Professor X is kind of shitty sometimes. Actually, he sucks most of the time.
Kind of a dick.
So... yeah, that's the big cliffhanger. But I do love that both of those stories do, like Storm's story and Professor X's story. I'm fine with after what happened in episode 5. I'm fine for an episode that is slower and it's a slowed down pace. And I also love that we're heading in the path of like, okay, this is going to be really big because Professor X is coming back and Storm is coming back. And like it's going to be a big deal, and we're building to something big at the end of the season.
So this is what is really cool about this episode more than anything is that a lot of times, like one great example, or well, no, I couldn't give you a specific example, but sometimes they'll have like an anniversary issue or something, like a big double-sized issue, and the normal artist, who had been working for like 10, 12 issues straight, like does this, big issue and then takes an issue off. And instead of like having a guest artist come in, they'll have like, just a different story, kind of an interlude that doesn't have anything to do with anything before they get back to whatever the cliffhanger was in that anniversary issue. Right. This is like that. This episode is like that. It's one of those side stories that doesn't have anything to do with what we just left. But it gives the reader a chance to breathe for a month. But it also heightens the tension because you're like, what the fuck happened?
And we're moving these big chess pieces into the conflict. We're bringing in two powerhouse mutants in Charles and Storm.
The 200th issue, anniversary issue. It's not the 200th issue, but it's the whatever. Where it's Magneto's trial. Romita. It's clear that at some point there were a lot of artists helping out because he had just been doing it for goddamn years at that point. And so the next issue, I think, was Rick Leonardi. And that issue was Storm and Professor X fighting over who got to lead the X-Men. But that was clearly like, hey, the artist needs a month or two off.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been making this deadline for like years now. And despite the fact that Romita is fucking awesome and can do it, that's what I liked about this episode. It was kind of like you remember what we just left? Well, You're not going to see that.
Hold
just
on
yet.
for a second.
Like, fuck you.
We've got to pull these characters
and
into
then
the
after
story.
you watch it, you were like, okay, I'm glad we had that.
It made
Thanks.
sense because you have.
I was pissed, but now I'm happy. Thanks, dude.
You have an ending where both these characters are caught up. They know what's happening, and they are like, I have to go save my people. And that is what is the one, despite all the flaws of these X-Men, and that is what unites all of them, is they want to protect their people, and they want the best for their people.
Also, Gambit's a dude.
And dude, there are so many moments in this series, and I've talked about it on this show, where there are moments where I feel like a kid again.
There are moments.
Where I'm reminded of just what always appealed to me as a kid and still appealed to me as an adult, of like the moment when she finally overcomes the adversary and flies and like has the lightning storm and the clouds, and she shoots out of the she flies out of the volcano, and then you see the new look that she has. It's just so fucking cool.
It's retro 70s, which is awesome.
And like
that's the best costume for me. That or the mohawk with the punk jean jacket vest.
That was
More
just a
lock
moment of I couldn't help but be excited because I was like, oh, like she gets to she has that moment with that fight where the adversary talks about what she said to Jean, and like you wish you would had the thought of being human, and she's like, it's a great thing to see her get her powers back in that instance of being like, no, I am a mutant and I am proud of who I am. And
also she's like Omega level. Dude,
yeah,
ridiculous.
And they're really.
I can't wait for you to read the Sinister, Sins of Sinister storyline, dude.
But Storm has always been, well, she was just like Cyclops. She was criminally underutilized in those X-Men movies, and I think a lot of people have misconceptions because, like in the comics, she's always been fucking.
She's
awesome.
always been one of like two. Her and Cyclops and maybe Wolverine are like three. Nightcrawler's led before, but those are the three characters that almost always are the leader of the X-Men, at least when I was reading it. It was almost always Cyclops or Storm or sometimes Wolverine. Once in a while,
they're the most popular for sure. So they've always been one of those.
Well, they've
three.
just been better at. Yeah. I don't know. I'm talking about them like they're real people. Well, those three people are they're characters.
Anyway,
they can do whatever you write
it's
them
personal
to do.
Preference. Again continues to be a great show, and even in a slower episode, it still continues to shine, and it's still
slower. Yes, but I mean the tension and everything, like with the adversary stuff.
I love that. It was such
a
gnarly,
where, like,
spooky
the
design.
The fucking head was just turning around like while it was crawling up.
Yeah.
And it was just like, wow, that's really, really cool. And then it was just I liked it a lot. I was a big fan. And then of course, at the very end they both sets of sidebar stories end with the main characters of those sidebar stories going, shit, we got to get back to the real shit.
Shit, we got to get back to the shit.
So we'll see what happens there. There wasn't a after credits shit, was there? I hope they're not doing after credits shit in an animated movie.
Well,
or
it was
show.
It was. What was at the end of the episode?
Just it was Storm, I thought.
Yeah.
Saying, "Oh my god."
Yeah. So we got to talk about X-Men '97, episode 7. Was it Sugar? I think was the name of the episode.
I don't fucking know, but it was fucking dark.
Fucking dark.
It was fucking dark.
So it starts with Rogue kind of just going rogue. Pardon the pun.
Nice.
And going on a manhunt to get to Bolivar Trask because she wants to know where they made. They had the master mold.
And meanwhile, the other X-Men are in Genosha trying to help clean up. They find Emma Frost. I liked that. I like that things that I take for granted, like the fact that Emma Frost has a diamond form. At some point, she didn't. And, this is a really cool. They're like, wow, additionary, secondary mutation. You're like, well, I've always been like good under pressure,
Mm-hmm.
Like that was kind of cool. I like that they're introducing stuff like things that we take for granted. Again, that Cable is Cyclops' son. Oh wow, they just revealed that. You know what I mean? Like to him,
Yeah.
I like that a lot. I like that some of the things we take for granted are just like, whoa. Because it's throwing me for a loop a little bit sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with what happened when they do find Trask.
Yeah, that was pretty wild. So, which...
They're called Prime Sentinels, by the way.
Yeah, so I'll get into that in a little bit more about why I fucking love that twist at the end so much. Me personally. But I was the only... If you're someone like me who, like, for a while, until recently, weren't, like, super versed in the X-Men lore, the only exposure I have to Trask is Peter Dinklage in Days of Future Past.
Mm-hmm.
So to see like a government official in that story, but you see like the religious fanatical type that he is in the show and in the comics, it's like it's such a cool change.
Well, I mean, whether you like it or not, I mean, it's a very and I let me, before I say this, I want to state that there is no evidence or indicators that show that the show's writers had this in mind or that this is what they intended or whatever. But to me, it's so fucking obvious. Trask and Gyrick are like fucking Musk and fucking whatever, dude.
Zuckerberg.
And, whatever. And
they have to like one up each other on their
mutant. It's like they're basically like an amalgamation of rich assholes and white supremacists, which honestly is not that far from each other. And then the X-Men mutants are anybody who's brown. To be honest, anybody who's not quote unquote pure or whatever,
straight white.
Let's be honest. What is going on in our world right now is that there's a bunch of shitheads out there,
dude,
who are saying, "Hey, I'm white." Yeah, you're afraid. You're afraid of what's coming, and that's fine. I'm not.
My favorite part of this episode is when Beast is talking to the reporter. I can't remember her name.
Yes, Tilby.
When he's talking to her, and she's pretty much saying like maybe Genosha was too far, like doing this whole United Nations thing. Maybe you guys should have waited. And then him to just throw it back at her face, like even after they're walking around a literal fucking war zone. Graveyard. A mutant graveyard. And she has something, and it's like such a great moment of him just being like, I'm sorry we had to put a fucking timetable. He didn't say fucking, but I'm sorry we had to put a timetable on your tolerance.
Yeah.
Which was like such a good line because it's true. It's like, fuck you.
People, there are so many people in this world. We are naturally afraid of the future and we're afraid of the unknown.
We're scared of things we don't understand.
Of course. And there are so many of people in power right now who are preying on you. And so many of us are letting them, and it's just shut up.
Well,
stop it.
It's a great moment to.
But it's
a great moment to see someone like Beast who is
generally the cooler head.
Yeah, and
in the group,
and he's like usually the one. Yeah, that's always the straightforward.
He's almost the anti-Wolverine.
He's a logical
almost
guy. Right.
He's rarely impulsive. Not that Wolverine gives into his impulses like a lot, but right. They're both hairy. They both kind of got the same kind of hair, right?
Yeah. But have him even being like, it's just like we talked about before we recorded, which is like mindfulness and like that moment of him trying to be like, step outside of yourself for a fucking second because you don't understand because you're human. Being like, look at where we are and look what happened to my people, and you have the audacity to say, hey, wait, maybe we should have slowed down on having you guys be a part of the United Nations and be protected by the UN.
We talked about the bear or the man question, and one of the things I've seen on Twitter a lot is these pieces of shit responding and being like, well, a bear will kill you, like. Look.
I don't want to get into that rabbit hole. I want to.
No, I'm saying this, like, you know, it comes down to, you know, do you understand what it means, or are you willing to accept that things happen to other people even if they don't happen to you? And the mutant thing in this universe of the cartoon and general in the comics has always been about, you know, humans not understanding what it means to be mutant. And it is a simple allegory to a straight person not understanding what it's like to be homosexual, a white person not understanding what it means to be black, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So it's natural that, like, it just happens to be an allegory because this fucking world right now is just so on the edge of that all the time. It's why, how did we get back to this?
And like,
and I'm glad that there's a show out there that's holding a mirror up to us right now, because we should be. And
like, honestly, man, I this show, I had high hopes for it, and it's exceeded,
blowing my mind,
so many expectations. It's so good.
What I like about it, and I talked to my brother about Revenge of the Sith way back. And, you know, we weren't super big fans of the first two, but Revenge of the Sith is pretty fucking dope, right? Because it's kind of cool watching him, and then the whole fight with him and Obi-Wan at the end or whatever. We didn't really.
The prequels have their moments.
I talked to my brother about how much there was something about the prequel movies that I liked, even though I knew how they were going to end. They're going to end with Anakin Skywalker becoming Darth Vader,
that's the porn
right?
parody. Yeah.
We know how it's going to end, but still, they made it. There was a lot of ways that they made it fun and tense and like, ooh, you know, thrilling. You know, oh, cool, and you know, epic, grand, right? Cool. Thank you, George. So I was talking to him about how much I liked that. That even though I knew what the end result was, I still was invested in these characters, you know, that we were meeting along the way and whatnot. And the same thing with this show, except for like to an nth degree.
Yeah.
In that I know so much about the X-Men lore, and I know so little about the original animated show. I don't know what's canon in this universe yet or not. So it's just every time something happens, whether it's something I knew about or not, it blows my mind, how they change it so that it like, again, with like Forge taking away Storm's powers, how they change it in this cartoon compared to the comics and whatnot. Yeah. I love like that I know about all of these things, but it still manages to blow my mind and to just, wow, that twist when fucking Trask comes to life. What the fuck? I don't even know if I'd never heard of Prime Sentinels at that point or something.
Oh, well, that's okay. But, we'll get to that. So
I'm just saying it continues. It's such a good show because it continues to, you know, just have those moments of like, what the fuck? Like, wow, just wow. And even though I know a lot of what's already going to happen, I like it. I like that shit.
Excuse me. I had a burp.
Gross. What do you got? You have a gastrointestinal system? Yuck.
Get out. I love the rogue side plot of her like just going and finding these dudes and like fucking them up. Going off. We got to see Jean actually use her powers, so that was fun.
We got to see Captain America.
The Captain America cameo was cool. Oh, my favorite part of that is when she took a shield
and she was like, "Fuck you."
Yeah, you don't need it. Oh, you don't need this, and she just fucking chucks it as far as she can,
which is going to be pretty far.
And he's just sitting there like, well, but yeah, the fact that
walking.
Which again, it's like, dude, think and like, I like this scene because it works for Steve as a character, and it also is frustrating for Rogue and the viewer because we're like, you guys fucking saw what happened, and you're not gonna help us.
Well, he's talking about protocol and like
hey, don't kill them. It's like
shit, and it's like, go fuck yourself, dude.
Two people that I loved and cared about were fucking murdered by these things, and you're just gonna be like, hey, don't kill them, be cool. It's like, fuck you, you know. It's like, again, it goes back to the theme of the show, the theme of these characters, and what it just works so well is that driving factor of like, Jesus, man, It really is a superhero soap opera, and the X-Men get fucking beat to dirt all the time, but they're like, hey, we're still better than those guys. And you want to root for them. You want them to rise above it.
Right, and this is still the way it is in the most recent Marvel comics I've read, which is admittedly like a year or two ago, but the way that it still is in the comics is that the X-Men are largely respected among the superheroes of the Marvel Universe, you know? Yeah. But that's about as far as it goes. There are some friendships, that transcend like the X-Men moniker.
Wolverine and Cap went to war together.
But a lot of that, but there aren't a lot of there aren't a lot of human mutant like superhero friendships in the comics that I can think of right away. I was thinking of Spider-Man and Human Torch, but Human Torch isn't a mutant. He's Fantastic Four. But that's like a big one. Deadpool is technically a mutant. He's sort of Spider-Man's buddy in the comics, but I don't know if I'd go that way. You know, it seems to me that they're always going to be outsiders.
Yeah.
And they just have to be, not just because the other heroes think, well, there's something different about them, but they have to, because of the very nature of the universe that they live in and the society that they live in, they have to be aware and vigilant of the fact that they're different from everybody else.
And it's also...
I'm a mutant, you're a human. I got to know that.
It's also funny because whether or not it was Stan Lee and Jack Kirby's intention to make it an allegory about civil rights and things like that, it naturally progressed into that because of their own laziness. Because... they're like, well, we need a bunch of superheroes on this team. Let's just call them mutants, and like we're born with these fucking powers. We don't have to go into everybody gets bit by a radioactive night crawling worm. Because Nightcrawler, but it
was a way. It was a way to provide motivation for Magneto
and a bunch of characters, and you don't have to explain their origin. They're just born. Yes,
it was laziness. Like, okay, well, Spider-Man got bit on the hand by a radio. Well,
but that's what I mean. Because of their own laziness, they created that allegory because now the mutants are othered a little bit inside even the superhero community because it's like, yeah, well, Spider-Man got bit by a spider. Captain America's a super soldier. We got, Iron Man's just a rich dude with a suit of armor. Thor's a god. Like, and then you look at, we got Cyclops and Wolverine. They were just, these mutants.
I'm surprised.
And then you got the Inhumans.
I'm surprised that Thor never has a kinship with mutants because he was born that way, right?
Yeah,
Phoenix is his mom, but when you think about it, they're always going to be, I know that in the Marvel universe and in this show, the human superheroes are in their minds. They're just kind of like, man, I wish they would just kind of stop harping on the fact that they're mutants. We get it. Just, whatever, right? Do you remember the Chappelle's show?
Yeah.
When keeping it real goes wrong?
Yeah.
And ostensibly what it was is it was showing how much shit you have to take to get ahead, right?
Yeah.
That's generally what the skit was about.
Because if you were honest with people, you wouldn't have a job.
Right.
Yeah.
But also it was like, hey, my favorite one was the guy in the boardroom. And he was like, you know what I mean, homie? And he was just like, huh? And he just goes off. Bark, bark, woof, woof. And just goes off, right? Goes street on him. And then he gets fired from the job and whatever. He's just about ready to get
real goes wrong.
Right. And he's an idiot, right? Because it's like, why he meant nothing by it, but because you had to be like, you know what I mean? And that's a lot like the way mutant heroes are viewed by other heroes in the Marvel universe, in the comics. It's like, great, here's Wolverine talking about how hard it is to be a mutant again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where there's always going to be that disconnect between human characters and mutant characters in the Marvel universe, and why it actually transcends even, the white, the segregation, things like that, civil rights, why it even transcends that.
We're seeing the chess pieces be put into place. So we're building to the end of it. And
when Rogue
go ahead.
I was just going to say, when she dropped him anyway.
Oh, my God, that was so good.
That was a twist that I didn't see coming because
Well, and again,
they've killed people in the comics, but
both
not
can,
Rogue really.
Both can be
Wolverine.
true. Both can be true. What she did was wrong.
Yeah, but
like Wolverine,
felt pretty good.
But like Wolverine says, she was pretty fucking justified.
Felt pretty good though,
right? But then him to levitate up, all like,
and then there's another twist.
His head
coming
is spun
at me.
around, and so his body turns. I'm like, oh fuck, is he with like the adversary? Is that what it is?
Oh yeah. Well, the big rooster thing, big owl thing. No, yeah.
I was thinking that, and then his eyes start glowing, and he turns into and I'm like, oh
Did you
my
see?
god.
Okay, I watch my shit with subtitles. So when there's like noises, like whatever, it'll describe them in parentheses. Yeah. And while I was watching that, during that scene, it was bones cracking. When he was like turning around and shit, and it was just like, oh, how fucking grotesque. Yeah. Like how.
So it made me like
visceral.
When me go, oh shit, that's awesome. Was how much of a deep cut it is of Sentinels, because I knew, and this is what you and I were talking about, both of us having enough knowledge of the lore, and having kind of fresh eyes on this show. Funny enough, I knew about this because shout out to the Marvel scripted podcast, Wolverine: The Long Night. Because spoilers, if you haven't listened to it, you should. It's great. But the big twist ending. Do we have pizza time still?
No, never mind. Good. The big twist ending.
So it's like a crime procedural. It's like a like Serial, like those kind of podcasts. Yeah. It's an investigation. There's a whole bunch of shit. But at the end of it, the two cops that are investigating the whole case, that it's Wolverine is implicated in a murder or something, and they're trying to solve it and all this shit. This final confrontation, Wolverine attacks the guys, and the guy interrogating him, or they have a fight because he goes, I could smell it. You're a Sentinel, bub. And that was, so to see that also show up here in this show, it's like, oh shit, okay, so we're digging deep in this shit. Like,
so I'm not fully versed on Bastion because we'll get to that, but I want
whole thing.
Yeah, we'll get to the end stuff, but I want to discuss Bastion because I'm not well versed in him, but I am well versed in he's an amalgamation of Master Mold and Nimrod. And now Nimrod is like the baddest ass Sentinel there is. He's from an alternate timeline, alternate future. And the one time they defeated him during the Claremont Ramita run in the 80s was right after Rachel Summers tried to kill the Black Queen, who was like a vampire, psychic vampire, right? And Wolverine basically cuts her.
Yeah.
And she's dying. And Rachel Summers is the daughter of Scott and Jean Grey from the Days of Future Past timeline or whatever. So Nimrod, they literally have to like kill like 3 like X-Men and Hellfire Club guys to kill this Nimrod guy, this ultra fucking Sentinel, because he can. I mean, Nightcrawler almost kills himself, like trying to teleport part of him away, because that's the only way like that they can. Yeah. It's just because he's got defenses for all of them.
Yeah, and
he's got defenses for all of them in the future when they're like way better at their powers. So like.
Speaking of,
but Nimrod is. I'm super fucking happy to see that that's coming in, because they've shown him in the open before.
Yeah.
But can we talk about, before we continue on to the Bastion stuff, I want to mention something I've been wanting to talk about since the beginning of the show. The opening titles.
Yeah.
How they have every guy.
They keep hinting at it, yeah.
No, they keep showing the changes.
Yeah.
Like
the timeline changes, yeah.
Well, no, like each character on the team has their own little thing, right? And like, hey, all of a sudden, Magneto, after the first episode, Magneto is in there.
Yeah, and then Bishop shows up with longer hair and Cable's in it. Yeah.
I'm saying that like that's they address that that they like Nightcrawler's in it now in the opening titles. I like how they change with each fucking episode depending on what's going on.
Yeah, and I
think that's really cool. We haven't talked about that at all. Now, Cyclops, I think, is the only one, maybe Jean Grey, who's been in every one. Maybe Wolverine, too.
Oh yeah, Wolverine, Beast.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I am.
But it's pretty cool.
I am pretty happy that Wolverine isn't the focus.
Me too. Because there's so much better.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like
I won't say better, but there's so many more stories.
No, X-Men is so much better when it's about an ensemble.
Yeah.
And there are some really good Wolverine stories, but Fox focused so much on Wolverine in those X-Men movies, so to see them actually, focus on Cyclops and Storm and the stuff with Charles and Magneto, all that stuff. I got shout out to Nightcrawler. His eulogy for Gambit.
Dude, I fucking was crying
that was so sweet.
Fucking hard. And dude, can we talk about how great of a fucking character Nightcrawler is?
Dude, what a guy.
No,
when he fucking hugs Rogue, she says, and he goes, none of that was your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And she just collapses into his arms, and he holds her, and she's crying.
Nightcrawler has always been the conscience of the X-Men.
Yeah, he's such a good dude.
And what a brilliant idea that Claremont came up with, or I think it was Cockrum maybe, or Claremont, but I can't remember. Whoever was writing the comic at the time, Len Wein maybe, whatever. But when they first came in, the giant-sized X-Men back in the 70s that introduced all of those characters, including Nightcrawler, I believe it was Claremont who introduced the idea that he was a devout Catholic, very seriously Catholic. And he was born looking like a devil.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What a fucking great... Oh, my God. The richness of stories you can tell with a character like that. I mean, that alone... But he's always
been.
Then
you talk about all the bamfing.
Well, there was the during the Krakoan stuff. There was I can't remember, but it was a book starring Nightcrawler. It was a limited series, and I bought it for a little while, and it was basically about him trying to create a religion, because anytime a mutant got killed, they could be resurrected on Krakoa, and he was watching kids. I talked to you about this. He was watching kids kill themselves for fun because they knew they'd be resurrected, and it horrified him, being a devout Catholic, right?
Yeah.
And to him, it was tantamount to suicide. Yes. So he's just he's looking around, and he talked to Dr. Nemesis, who had been turning himself into a living psilocybin mushroom. Did I tell you about that? Yeah, he literally does. He turns himself. By the time of the Sins of Sinister storyline, they finally go back to Earth to find him, and he's literally spread across this 100-foot wall, and he's just balls tripping out. He's just what happened? It's awesome. Anyway, when we review that, you'll have a lot of fun. But I just
will I?
Yeah.
Finish your thoughts.
It's just really, I just really like it.
We're spoiled.
Spoiled. It's just a great dichotomy for that character, and just when Nightcrawler was gone for so long in the X-Men comics, it was tough.
Mm-hmm.
Because he during that the mutant massacre is when he first got hurt, and then he just kind of disappeared for a while, and then he went to Excalibur for a while, and that was cool because you got Excalibur. Claremont was still writing it. So you could still get that story, and then Alan Davis, of course, his art was awesome, but it was just strange not having Kitty Pryde and Nightcrawler with the X-Men for a long time when I grew up with them like that.
I want to type one final thing.
Good.
I want to say. I knew it was going to happen, but there was part of my back of my mind there's no fucking way they're going to kill this team. They're not going to kill Cyclops and all them the episode before the finale, right?
Well, it's a 3-part finale. We got 3 more episodes.
I thought maybe 2 more.
I've heard it's a 3-part end thing. The final thing is 3 parts.
Well, either way.
Why are you so against it?
I don't know. Either way.
This was episode 7?
Yes.
8, 9, 10. That makes perfect sense.
Is it though? Is it 10?
Why would it be 9?
I don't know. It happened.
Why would it be 8?
I don't know.
What is wrong with you?
I don't know. I don't fucking run it. I'm not Disney Plus.
You're not? I quit.
I'm not Bob Iger.
I quit. You're not Iger?
I'm not Bob Disney.
Bob. I'm not Jack.
You know, the CEO,
I'm
Bob
not
Disney.
Jack Fox.
No, every CEO is it.
Yeah.
It's Bill Microsoft.
That's what their name.
It's Jeff Amazon.
Elon.
Mark Facebook.
Elon Tulsa.
Elon X.
Elon Tesla.
Oh, I'm sorry. Elon Twitter.
Yeah, fuck off with that X bullshit. Off panel, off topic with Jake and Tyler.